Hi, this is a new series from IO Associates exploring how people from different backgrounds navigate their journeys into tech and into management within tech. Today, I'm here with Dee, who I met at our Technical Leadership Collective meetup and had some really, really interesting stories to say. And yeah, I thought it'd be great to have her along to share with you. Dee, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Dalgis, but I go by D because nobody can pronounce or spell that to save their lives. I am an engineering manager at MyPingPad, a software mobile payments company.
Amazing. Could you share a little bit about your early life? And maybe it'd be interesting to hear, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I was born in Cuba, born and raised in Cuba. Moved to Spain to do university and then came to England to complete my postgrad education. When I was very little, I probably did whatever a child wanted to do. So I wanted to be a doctor. That soon left me when I realized that biology was not my thing.
No. And 10 years of school?
And 10 years of school. I wasn't even aware of that part. I'm like, yeah, no biology. My parents were both programming lecturers back in Cuba. So I guess I got it from them, an interest in technology.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, what I wanted to do, what I wanted was to follow in their footsteps. I just wanted to end up being a programming lecturer at the same university at which they worked.
What made you change from them wanting to be like a lecturer to actually being hands-on and working in industry?
Our move in Cuba, after we moved, it became clear that my experience of academia in Cuba was very different from what academia would be in Europe. And the version here was a little bit less appealing. So more the hands-on approach in technology definitely ranked higher than academia.
Yeah. A bit more fun too. A bit more practical.
Yeah. My dad, in Cuba, my dad had both a lecture and a hands-on responsibilities. So yeah, I think that's how I changed.
Okay. And do you think there was like a specific moment where you decided, okay, no doctor, I want to be in tech?
Probably not a specific moment, but a collection of little moments. We had a computer at home when I was little. I was the only child that I knew that had a computer at home because my parents were heavily involved with computers. And my dad would periodically clean the graphics cards or the RAM with an eraser. This is old technology. No, you don't have to do that now.
No, Marilyn.
And I wait for my parents to be at work, and then I unscrew the cover of a computer and try and clean something. I cannot promise that I was cleaning the same thing with an eraser. And I got caught a couple of times and I got in trouble. But yeah, I think that's kind of how it took hold.
Yeah. It's lucky in a way, isn't it? Because a lot of women don't really grow up in the house where programming and technology is seen as a career path. A lot of people introduce later in life. So it's good to be around that sort of.
Yeah, I grew up surrounded by books on fuzzy logic and C++. I still don't know what fuzzy logic is.
I do C++.
So yeah, it was definitely an easier way to become acquainted with that world.
Yeah. Then how did you get, I guess, foot in the door into your first tech role?
I applied for it.
There you go. Next question. How did you find the application process? Was it, what sort of role did you apply to do?
I applied for the developer role because it was very clear to me that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a software engineer. And it was actually a peculiar situation. The company at the time was looking for 2 support engineers and one software developer. And among the people that applied, there were, I guess, 2 good software developers and 1 good support engineer. So they ended up changing the people that they were going to hire, and they got me, and they got another German guy. Yeah, it was very interesting, the interview process. I think I spoke with at least 4 people in the interview process. I probably answered wrong a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
But There are also, and for any software engineer that might be watching this, there were the type of questions that software engineers don't necessarily memorize because Google exists.
Yeah, right.
So I think they let me off, and it worked out.
Yeah. I find people say, like, if you don't know the answer, just explain how you'd find out the answer in interviews, and often that helps. I've never been in an interview for tech, so I have no idea. Um, so you applied to be a software engineer. I assume you got the software engineering role.
I did.
What was your experience for your first role? Like, how did you find navigating the commission side of it?
Um, it was my first foray in the working world as a proper adult, not as a side job, as a babysitter or anything like that. The company had a really good culture partially because it used to hire a lot of young people, so it was very easy to feel at home. All of my friends, we're talking about, oh my gosh, 13 years ago. Not that anybody's counting.
That's not that long ago.
But yeah, all of my long-term friends that I still spend the most time with are people that I met back home, and people that were in similar circumstances to me, their first job out of uni. So in that sense, it was a really cool place to work in. In terms of technology, the department in which I ended up working created very niche software in C, which is not exactly a modern language. It's like the long-running grammar language that everyone thinks they'll get rid of, but it just remains.
Just keeps going.
It just keeps going. So that made me feel very proud that I was working with something that was not necessarily trendy or straightforward, but that you had to really understand the nitty-gritty of the system and of the specifications you were expected to work with. So
Yeah. I imagine it's very, when you're working with C and not working with the newest and latest, that you build a good foundation of just the fundamental skills.
yes, absolutely. Let's say I'm trying to think of a suitable metaphor, but let's say in C you have more responsibilities as a programmer. In more modern languages, it's like you have a house cleaning person that comes and deals with your rubbish and cleans the counters and cleans the bathroom. In C, you have to do all of that yourself. Otherwise, everything tanks and explodes in the most tragic ways. So it instills very good discipline when it comes to programming. But then you move into a house that has a house cleaning person and you forget how to take out your own trash.
It's there somewhere, but yeah, you do get a bit used to it. I actually love Megan. I don't know what I'd do without her. Okay, cool. So then how do you get from working in C in a not small company, but, as a junior developer, what was the journey from that into your management career?
Well, after I had spent some time with the company, I kept wanting more. I'm always wanting more. So I pursued progression within the company. Um, there weren't established frameworks. There weren't formal frameworks in the company at the time as to how people would progress. I went from a junior developer to a senior developer after a number of years. Number of years after that, I wanted more. Other people, which I'm sure we might get into this later, other people with similar experience, both inside the company and outside, to me, had been promoted in similar departments. So they had gotten the added responsibility that they were seeking, and I wanted that. So myself and another software engineer in the company, Sarah, we were both after this progression that didn't exist for us. So we started working in a progression framework for engineers in the company to formalize how you could go from a software engineer to a mid-level, to a senior, to a tech lead or a team lead, depending on what your interests were. And eventually that got put into place after a lot of back and forth and a lot of paperwork. And that's how I made it into management.
Congratulations. When you're doing your framework, what was the reason you decided that there needed to be a framework in place versus just waiting, essentially, or like seeing how the other people had progressed, waiting for that to happen?
Honestly, because I had waited long enough for that to happen. There were, and accounts may vary, but there were other people in the company that had been promoted to management, even though they didn't have a team to manage. So let's see, the progression had been recognized, and they had been given the opportunity to move higher up, and they deserved it. This is not a question on how much they deserved it, but me and this other engineer, coincidentally, both of us women. Coincidentally, none of the other were women. So cousins. We found that it was not happening for us. And when we asked for more, then it just became obvious that there was a gap. So that we could either pursue our own progression and insist on us being moved to whatever we thought we deserve, and no one at that point had a good argument as to why we didn't deserve it, or we could help create a path for everything that came after us. So we focused on the second part.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not just asking for what you need for yourself and want for yourself or deserve for yourself, but also making sure that moving forward it's fair for anyone that joined the company.
Yeah, that was the intention, because part of what that uncovered was that there was at least a sense of perceived unfairness as to why other people had managed to progress further than we had, even though we all entered the company at very similar times, had very similar levels of experience, had very similar levels of responsibility, had achieved projects of similar value. So there was no obvious reason that, okay, well, surely if we manage to put a framework in place, then this cannot be ignored for the next person.
So who along your journey stand out to you as like an inspiration or a mentor?
I wouldn't say that I didn't identify anyone in particular as a mentor as such. I have not come across many people that were mentor material, to be honest. In terms of inspiration, I've always found my mom very inspiring. She is an automation engineer, later turned programming lecturer. In Cuba, women are meant to look after. It's like a 1950s housewife with a 2020 working woman. You're meant to have your full-time job, but you were also meant to look after the house and the children and the everything. And somehow she managed to do all of that and got a master's in engineering at the same time for some reason. And I'm sure she'd tell you that it was extremely difficult and grueling, but I do find very inspiring how she managed to do it all. So yeah, in terms of this inspiration, she'd probably be the closest person. It would have probably helped if I had met older women developers, because it would have been interesting to get the perspective of someone that has been in my position, that had been in my position for much longer. But unfortunately, I only encountered men or women of about my age or younger.
That's interesting. Have you ever had a female manager?
No.
And have you ever, in your companies, like maybe in different departments, has there been someone, like older women in tech?
Yes, there have been other women in positions of power in other departments. Not many, but some. It's been interesting to observe them from the distance, and to see how people around me would react to them. In the sense that, for example, there was a woman in sales in my first company, and by all accounts, she was an excellent salesperson. And the reaction to her seemed to be clearly divided between people that found it very nice to deal with her and that found her very knowledgeable and personable, and people that did not like her for any obvious reason and came across as if they were intimidated by her. So that was a very interesting phenomenon to witness, of if you don't abide by certain stereotypes, then you're intimidating, then you saw the scored in terms of the actions. So
Yeah, it goes back to like bossy versus strong, or like the different ways you label women and how we feel about them in the workplace as well. Like, even subconsciously, sometimes people don't know they're doing it for any particular reason, but they are fearing this feels wrong for some reason, so it must be her and not maybe how I'm viewing them.
Yes, it was very much that is a personal strong character, and she was either labeled really nice by the people that had enjoyed working with her, or really bossy by the other ones. I'm like, come
Wrong. So, what do you think the difference is between the tech industry when you first started and how it is now?
uh, I'd say some things have drastically changed. I started, if I remember correctly, it was before the Me Too movement. I know that luckily for me, hit me particularly directly, but there were things that were acceptable to be said in the workplace when I first started. And those things are no longer acceptable now. And but that we only thankful for.
Yeah, labeled as what was labeled as a banter.
Yes, yeah, the nature of banter has changed. Somehow we've managed to keep our sense of humor. Nobody have died.
Are there any moments or any situations that you remember throughout your career that maybe were uncomfortable or looking back just didn't feel right?
Yeah, there's been a couple of moments. Um, my previous company, my boss once described me in front of a customer as spicy, probably in the same vein of like strong character. And we labor in this yeah, in a non-positive way.
Which for Latina women, that's a phrase often used to describe, but not in a said way.
Um, I want to say I'm unlucky, but I don't know if that's lucky or not. It was all shared, like you said, in a bantery way, in a social environment, but realistically, that's not how I want to be perceived by people that I interact with um, in a professional manner. Definitely not spicy. And in addition to that, there's been the fair share of harassment. Although I think if you will know my answer this question similarly, um, yeah, harassment at conferences and stuff like that, places like that, but lend themselves that people to overstep their bounds. Um,
Yeah, we spoke about another story that I heard, wasn't it, when someone was speaking to someone in a similar industry, and at the end he goes, or she was like, "Oh, let's exchange numbers so we can, uh, connect and keep talking about this," and said, "No, sorry, I have a wife," and it's just like that's not why she wants your number.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess I expected us to get over the men and women cannot be friends or interact, in any other capacity that is not romantic or sexual. So when you hear something like that happen, it's like, I thought we were all over it. I thought we've known for years at this point. Um, but yeah, somehow it always catches you by surprise. Yeah, in a similar vein, I remember reminding at least one of the men that made inappropriate comments towards me that he was married.
Sometimes they take the rings off at the conferences, don't they, and things like that.
Oh yeah, I don't even want to think too hard about the culture that can be fostered in that type of environments. So
When we first met, I shared a story about someone that I spoke to, and it was the first time I ever heard of it. And she said that when she goes to interviews, she makes herself, and I think it was her words, as ugly as possible. So, she like will wear her ugly interview shirt and not wear makeup, tie her hair back, and the reason for that being is she wanted people in the interview to be judging her skills and her fit for the role and not how she looked. And since then, it made me really think about like how many women change their either appearance or present themselves in different ways during interviews. So it'd be interesting just to hear if you thought about how you approach interviews and if there's anything that you change about yourself to appear more tech or
it's It's interesting that you mentioned that. I had not thought of that until you mentioned it. The first time I was, at least for the first few years of my career, when I interviewed for my first job, I remember making a point to tie my hair back in a bun. Because for the same reason that your friend told you that, my hair, I don't know, may catch the attention of some people. I definitely did not want it to be the reason why I caught anyone's attention. Uh, there's already few enough women in tech that I don't want to focus to be on my hair or how I'm a woman. I want to be a techie. That's what I want anyone to perceive me as, an interview process.
Yeah, and to be remembered for your answers, and if they got like you were a good fit, rather than what your hair looked like and being an unpopular reason.
Or be taken less seriously because I'm a woman, or be judged because maybe I spend too long on my hair, although obviously I don't spend too long on my hair. It's just natural. So yeah, I wanted anyone's thoughts about me to focus on the technical side of the interview, which I know there's a human component to the interview, teeny feet, a lot of body language cues. But yeah, my femininity, I didn't want my femininity to be part of that equation. Yes. In a similar and near opposite way, I remember once I started attending these conferences for work, again, very niche area of payments and of software development. And it was a room of about 100 people, and 95 were men of around the age of 50, white men of around the age of 50. There's probably, other variations, but that was the average person at that conference room. And I remember for those dressing very feminine, because to me it was important that if someone were to glance at the room, it was obvious that there were at least some women in the audience, that this was not just a male space. So I guess I've always trained in or let loose my femininity for opposing purposes.
I think as well, like it's important at these conferences, like you said, if there's like photos or if anyone walking by is like, oh, cybersecurity, that sounds interesting, and looks in the room and it's like, oh, well, there's no one that looks like me in there, so I can't possibly be a cybersecurity engineer. For example, it's important to have the representation there and to be bold in that representation. And it's for the same reason you approach interviews in a certain way, almost approaching conferences over I want to be seen, and I want this community to be a big part of who I am because I'm this and also good enough to be here.
Yes, I mean, the key difference there was, in one I was hoping to get a job, and the other one I already had the job. So my position, my employment was not in question in the conferences. So I was in a better position to assert myself in all that I am. Not that I made myself girlier than I am, but I did wear red high heels and my hair just the biggest I could get. Like nobody can look at this room and say there are no women here. So no, there are women in payments. There are women in software development.
So how when you interview people, with like, do you see many women coming through to interview either at like current company or at other companies?
Unfortunately not. The vast majority, if not all the people that I've interviewed in person, have been men. If you change, realistically, we don't produce enough in and software developers. So we're never going to encounter, as the market stands right now, a 50-50 or a 30-70 even distribution between women and men in terms of software engineers. So I feel that that's an issue that needs to be solved. Primary school and upwards, because they're buying that many. women software developers. I mean, most companies still are not employing enough women. The proportion of women in the workforce or engineer is lower than what the market has to offer. But it would be good if we could offer, if the market had more to offer as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think school visits and getting kids excited about it from an early age as well. And almost what you didn't have in your career, which is that representation of, like, I'm not saying it's on every woman now to go to like primary schools and do more work and take care of the house and whatever else you need to be doing. But what I'm saying is, like, if companies would allow or showcase that we have within engineering management positions, or even just in normal like software day-to-day and development positions, and that this is what they do and this is what they create and this is why it's more than just numbers on the screen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's, again, not that I think the responsibility is on women to fix the problem, but there are aspects of the problem that we can either complain that the world is not fair and wait for the world to play fair, or we can do more about it ourselves. And it's not fair that it's on us, but what do you want? What do you want there to be the outcome? So yeah, I'd encourage people to get involved with youth organizations that offer mentorship programs, and through there, you either may be a good software engineer mentor to a young person, women or men, or if you are younger, you might find a good mentor through those organizations. And this is not about software development only, but it's any STEM. You might find a representation that you're looking for, or you might be able to provide that representation.
Yeah. I think as well, like, talking about achievements and sharing success, and that doesn't have to be on women. If someone is a male manager and has a team and someone's a woman on the team and she's done something brilliant, like, I'm not saying take that home and tell your daughter right away, but like, just saying to people like this, guess who's on my team, she did this amazing thing, and just making the language more common in homes and schools and in day-to-day life.
Learn how to ask in the right way. Be gracious.
Yeah.
And
evidence
rejection.
Learn how to take rejection.
And yes, evidence-based. What are your strengths? Bring your strengths to the table. It doesn't matter if you bought a new house or you need the money for this or that. What matters is what you're worth. Yeah. Not what you need. And you're probably worth more than what you're getting. So
Absolutely.
happen at it.
And learn to believe in what you're worth as well. I think a lot of women sell themselves short or are just grateful to have the opportunity, but most people are in the positions they are because they are good at what they do. So learning to be confident in that.
Yeah, I mean, newsflash, most people I've met have imposter syndrome. Yeah. It took me until I was almost 30 to talk to my friends and go like, another two engineer girls and friends with me. Have you ever felt like you're going to get found out and you've just been a fraud this whole time? And all of a sudden, like, oh my God, yes. And the world opened for us. All of a sudden, we recognize that we've just been holding ourselves back. And at some point, you have to look back at your trajectory and all the things that have gone well and accept that perhaps you were good, despite what the little voice has been telling you since you can remember. Perhaps these are not a succession of coincidences. Perhaps you have had something to do with it. So you have to accept the evidence.
Yeah.
And just move forward despite the fears.
Yeah. That was very good advice. Really good advice.